So just to give a quick recap, so what we had, we started with factorial, a simple recursion, and then we went to more complex recursions where we had the recursive calls, each recursive call called a multiple number of recursions, and then one possible solution was you do not recompute the common subproblems, which is dynamic programming, and the other paradigm was you have this kind of problems where you classify the leaf nodes based on goal nodes or fell nodes, and the objective is to reach to some goal nodes rather than exploring the entire tree, and there you use backtracking, right? And then we had some example problems, which was maze, then graph coloring, then brain vita, and all these things. Okay, so in this section, I will be talking about the n-queens problem first. Then we will show how to use backtracking without recursion using stack. So I think everybody knows this stack data structure, right? And finally, I will give some kind of optimization, which is branch and bound on backtracking, right? Right, so for those who do not know 8-queens problem or the n-queens problem, you are given a chessboard where you have to place 8 queens such that no queen are attacking any one another. Right? And these are the moves that the queens can move either row wise or column wise or diagonal wise. Right? So for example, this is one configuration of the 8 queens where none of the queens can attack one another, right? Because so if you have this queen, then this is blocked, and this is blocked, and no other queen is placed in this row or column or diagonal. So there is a good animation where you can visit this site and you can play this 8 queens game, right? And it shows how to use backtracking using 8 queens problem. So that's one solution, that you have these 8 queens. That's the backtracking solution. You start from here, you place the first queen there, right? And then you try with this. So here this is blocked, these and these are blocked. So you cannot place the queens here because this attacks the column and the rows and also the diagonal. So these two positions are blocked. So you place the queens here and then you go on, right? So what is the algorithm here? So anybody with the backtracking algorithm here? So you will try to place the queens for every rows, right? And whenever at a particular row you are not able to place, then you will backtrack to the next, to the just previous row, right? So for example, here, yeah. So for example, here you see that in this particular row, this is blocked, this is blocked, this is blocked by this is blocked by this, and so on, right? So all the positions are blocked, right? So you are not able to place the queens anywhere here. So we will go back to the previous row and we will get a new position for this queen, right? So maybe we will find the position of this, and this will continue. Right, so that's the pseudocode for 8 queens problem or the n-queens problem. That so this is the base case, that if you have placed all the 8 queens, so if location is equal to size, so size here is 8 for the 8 queens problem, and for the n-queens problem it will be n. Then you are already done and you will return the solution. And for all other sizes, for I is equal to 0 to size, you try to place this. So use list is you have placed a queen in the row, in the ith row. So if this is false, then you will try to set use list, right? So you will find a solution where you are able to place it. So this is for location I, and then you will try to solve it recursively using for the remaining configuration. And if you are not able to solve it, then you will again backtrack. So this is set by use list I is equal to false. So any questions on the pseudocode? Okay. Yeah, so this I already explained that. Yeah. So this says that you found a solution to the solution, you print it, you loop through all the other rows, and yeah. So in this loop you mark the queen in this row and then solve recursively. If you are not able to find a solution, then you backtrack. So you unmark the row and try the next possible solution. So any questions on the n-queens problem? Okay, so the next thing that we try is we will show how to use stack in backtracking. So maybe we will use couple of examples here, and this is an alternative of using recursion for backtracking, right? So the first problem we will see is again Sudoku. So that's also a well-known problem here. So the idea is you have these boxes, and for every box you have to place one of the numbers 1 to 9 for every row. So you can use each number exactly once in each row, in each column, and also for every box you can place each number only once. Right? So that's the Sudoku game. And here also you can use backtracking. So anybody coming up with the solution of this, how we'll do backtracking here? So what we can do is we can just iterate through all the positions. Maybe first we take the first row, all the blank places of the first row, and then the second row, and so on. And we will try to place the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 9. And if you can find a number which you can place, then you try to place it. And if this confliction means that there is already the same number which appears in the row or in the column or in the same block, then you have to backtrack. Yes, this will be huge, right? Because for every position you have these 9 options, right? And that will lead to another position which will have 9 options, and so on. But some of them will be, invalid options, so we'll backtrack from those options.
So how many numbers do we have to place in each box?
Each box will have only one number. So this cell will have only one number.
This is the bigger box.
Bigger box you will have 9, right? There are 9 cells. 1, 2, 3, 3 cross 3. So 9 cells. So you will have to place one number 1 to 9, the digits 1 to 9 exactly once, each digit exactly once, right? So there is already 6, 5, 7, 4 which is placed here. So you have the remaining 5 numbers 1, 2, 3, 8 and 9 which you have to place in this box, right? And the idea of this, the objective of this game is that every row will have exactly one digit exactly once. These are already placed and you have to fill the remaining cells. So you cannot change these values. So the idea is. So the smaller boxes, you have to place one digit in these cells, in each of these cells, right?
Like we have a bigger box and then we have made again 9 boxes. Why?
So there are boxes, right? These individual boxes, the rule is you can have one digit exactly once in these boxes. So that's the rule, right? So you cannot repeat a digit twice in this box. So every row, so the rule of this game is every row will have one digit exactly once. So if you have already placed 6 here, you cannot place 6 in this row again. So you cannot repeat 6 in this row. You cannot repeat 6 in this column because you already have 6 in this column, and you cannot repeat 6 in this box because you already have 6 in this box.
But why these 9 boxes again? Like we have made a box for 6, 5, 7, 4.
Yes.
Why we made this?
So that's the rule of the game. So that's the rule. So that's the configuration, right? So you have that's a 9 cross 9 box which have 3 cross 3 sub boxes, and these are the rules of the game that for every block you can have only one digit at most once. And this is the initial configuration, and then you have to fill the blank cells, right? So that's the rule of the game. So anybody with the backtracking, some algorithm? So what we do is we will start from row 1 column 1 and try to keep on filling the empty cells, maybe row wise. First we will try this cell, then we will try this cell, and so on. And for every cell we will try all possible options, right? And then we will check which are the valid options. If the option is valid, then we will place that. If it's not valid, then we will try the next option. And if we run out of options, then we will backtrack and go back to the next previous option.
Since we are using stacks in this case, row wise or column wise?
Yeah, I will show you how to use stack, but you will have a stack for every entry you put in the every entry you set a value to. You will have a stack entry for that.
So that would be a 3 block wise?
So you will have, you will have all possible at any time of point. You will have at most 9 cross 9 values in the stack at most. If you are calling the recursion all the way. So this is essentially, the stack is nothing that will actually that will imitate the recursive calls. So idea is that you won't be doing recursion here, but instead of doing the recursion,
You would be using one stack for the whole pseudo
we will be using one stack for the entire box for the 9 cross 9,
81 entries.
which will be maximum 81 entries, but ideally it won't be 81 because the idea is that you will use the stack only to emulate the recursive calls.
Since we are checking that each, 1 to n should be occurring just once in every row or every column for that matter. So how does that, how will we check that?
Yes, so that is, you already have these values, right? So you already have these values filled, right? And there will be some values which you will be filling while you are proceeding with the algorithm. So you already have those values filled, and whenever you try to fill a new cell, empty cell, you will check which are the values which are already filled, and then you will check whether that leads to a conflict.
That I understood. I just wanted to ask you about, while using the stack,
Yes.
how do we ensure that we have,
See, the stack does not ensure that you will check that. The stack is only to maintain the backtracking whenever you do backtracking. How do you check that? You will just see all the values in this row and the column and the box, and then if it's a conflict, then that's an invalid value. Right. So the stack is not used to check the values. The stack is mainly used to maintain the backtracking stages. Right.
Backtracking probably plays a role once you have written all the boxes which are sure bound to have only one specific value. So maybe that's a pre-processing step that can be.
That's a pre-processing step which can be used. Yes. Right. Yeah. So any other questions on? And essentially, you can use stack to emulate any recursion, right? You can. So for any recursive call, you can just if you want to avoid the recursion, you can emulate it using stack. Right. So it's the same thing here. It's not any other difference. Right. Okay, so that's the algorithm. So what we do, we try to scan the board to look for an empty square. So that will be in some order. Maybe we do it row wise, and try to give the lowest value possible to those empty squares. And if you get stuck, then erase the last number. So that's the backtracking step, and place and try any other choices. And if you are running out of choices, then you have to go back to the previous stage. Okay, so now we have taken a very smaller example because it's easier to show the running of this algorithm. So so the idea is that instead of 9 cross 9, you have 4 Sudoku blocks, and the intermediate blocks are 2 cross 2, right? So these are the smaller blocks, 2 cross 2, and the total is 4 cross 4, and you have to fill the cells with the values 1, 2, 3, 4. So instead of 1 to 9, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, just 4 values. And these are the values which are already there in the initial configuration. So now the rule is that for every column you can have one number at most once, for every row you can have one number at most once, and for every subblock you can have one number at most once. Just like the original problem. Okay, so how do we do using stack the backtracking? Okay, so as before, we will start with the first empty cell, which is this one, and we will try to give a value which is valid. So what is a valid value here? So we see that there is already value 1 in the column, so we cannot put the value 1 here because that will lead to conflict with this value. Similarly, we cannot put a value 2 because there is already 2 here, so that will lead to conflict, right? So the first available value which we can put is 3, right? Because that does not lead to any conflict. So now what we do, we put the value 3, and then in the stack we maintain this entry that okay, the coordinates for I is equal to 0, j is equal to 0, that has value of 3. Right. So we maintain this information in the stack.
Either 3 or
It can be either 3 or 4, so we chose the minimum value, which is 3, right? So that's the algorithm, right? So look for an empty square that will take the lowest possible value. So we try with the lowest possible value.
Can you have 2 and 1 in the same row?
Yeah, so we have 2 and 1 here, right? So you cannot put 2 and 1 here.
2 and 1 on the top row. In the first row, we have given 2 and then 1.
Yes.
Can we have them in the same row?
Yes, we can have 2 and 1 in the same row. Why? Because 2 appears only once in this row, and 1 appears only once in this row, right? So every number can appear.
The question is, can you have it again? You can't have it again.
You cannot have it again. Yeah. So you already have 2 and 1 here. So you cannot place 1 and 2 here because that will lead to 2 and 1s, right? So that's why you have choices of only 3 and 4 at this position. So we took 3 because 3 is the lesser number. Right. So yeah. So when we insert 3, we also maintain a stack information that the coordinates for I is equal to 0 and j is equal to 0 has value of 3. Right, and then we are not calling recursion here. We go to the next empty cell, right, which is this one. So what are the possible choices here? So we already see that 1, 2, and 3 are already placed. So we cannot place 1, 2, and 3. Can we place 4 here? No, because 4 is already there in the column, right? So that's a dead end, right? So whenever there is a dead end, what we will do is we will pop out the stack. Right. So that's essentially the backtracking step if you see the recursive algorithm. So since nothing is available here, so we will pop out the stack and we will remove this entry as well. Right. And then we will fill this with the next available value, which is 4. Right. And since this is 4, then we will go to the next step. So so ideally I should have also entered here 4. So but yeah. So but actually you can avoid this because 4 is fixed, but yeah, but actually ideally you should have entered 4 here, right? So now we see that so if you have 4, then this is fixed, you don't have any other choices, so you will enter 3 here, right, because all the other values are taken. And now we will try here with the next possible choice, but here also this is fixed because in this box you have already 1, 2 and 4. So the remaining choice is only 3, right? Okay, and this is also fixed because this is not fixed. So now we come here and see that what is the possible choice here? So we see that it's either 2 or 4, right? So either of them is possible. So we try with 2 here. So if we again try 2, we will see that 4 is not possible here because that will lead to some conflict. So again we will pop up the stack, right? And we will try with 4, and that fixes the values here too. And then for this cell, what is the value which is available? Yeah, so it's already 1, 3 and 4 are gone, so 2 is fixed, and you can then fill the remaining cells which will be fixed. So essentially the stack is nothing but it's just to avoid the recursion. You are doing it iteratively, right, because you are just processing cell by cell, one cell at a time, and whenever you insert some value in the here, you can pop in some, you can push some value in the stack, and whenever you do a backtracking, you will just pop out the last entry. Right, so any questions on this problem? Okay. Okay, so I think I have a lot of time remaining because that's the last topic which I wanted to cover, and I will again try to go it very slow. Okay, so this is some technique which is used in, this is again some kind of optimization technique which is used in backtracking, and here the idea is again to prune some intermediate nodes, right? But rather than, so right now what we have seen in this backtracking is we have some kind of order, right? So every time we see maybe, so when we had those examples like the subset sum problem, we try to have some order that you take the first variable x1 is equal to 0, then choose the next variable x2 is equal to 0 and so on. Right? So rather than doing a fixed order, what here we will try is we will try some arbitrary order from a particular intermediate node. Right? and we will use some kind of lower bounds or upper bounds that will help us prune some node and also to decide which is the next leaf node, which is the next intermediate node which we want to visit next. Right. So I will give an example and we will go through it very slowly so that this brings up the idea. But the idea is here again some kind of optimization problem and also some kind of pruning. But the idea of pruning is based on some kind of determining some kind of lower bound and upper bound at each intermediate node. Okay, so I will illustrate this with this 0-1 knapsack problem. I think here also I think in the DP Venkat must have covered this problem. Subset sum. Okay. Anyway, so the problem is like this, that you are given n items, right? There are n items, and each of the item has some kind of profit and some kind of weight. So the profits of the n items are P1, P2, Pn respectively for the n items, and each of them has some kind of weight W1 to Wn. And there is a knapsack or some kind of bag which has a capacity of m, which means that it can accommodate at most m weights, right? And the objective is you have to find some kind of subset of these items which has the maximum profit and which fits the knapsack. So you cannot overshoot the capacity of the knapsack. You have to fit the size m and you have to find the profit of the set of maximum profit. So for example, if you have these elements, you have 4 elements which have profits 45, 30, 45, 10, and the weights are 3, 5, 9, 5, and your capacity is 16. So one possible solution is you pick the first and the third elements. So the weights of the first and third elements is 12, which is less than 16, and they have profit of 45 plus 45, which is 90. Right? So the problem is clear. Yeah. Okay. So we will. I will use the board and I will try to give a backtracking algorithm for this problem, and then I will show how to use branch and bound and do the optimizations in pruning. Okay, so this is called 0-1 knapsack problem because you can either pick a problem, pick an element, or you can just reject it. So you cannot pick some fraction of that element, right? So the other variation is the fractional knapsack, where you can pick some fraction of the element.
Is it visible at the back? Yeah, then you can write.
Okay. So this one is the 0-1 knapsack problem, right? Back. So 0-1 knapsack problem is pick an element, either pick an element or reject in the solution. And you have the fractional knapsack, which is you can pick some fractions of the element also. Right, and here the problem is the upper bound which we will use is that any solution of the 0-1 knapsack problem is less than the optimum fractional knapsack on same instance. Right. So that's the lower one which I will be using to do the branch and mount. Right? So why is it true that just to give some kind of intuition that suppose what we do is we sort the values in the ratio of profit to weight, right? So there will be some values which have profit P1, W1, P2, W2, maybe Pj, Wj, right, and so on. So we sort the numbers in the ratio of Pi is to Wi, right? And in the fractional knapsack problem, in the fractional knapsack problem, we will just pick the first few elements, and maybe some fraction of Pj is to Wj. Right? So that the weights exactly fit the knapsack quantity. Right? Whereas in the case of 0, 1, you won't be able to pick this element. Rather than you have to pick some elements which have the lower profit is to weight ratio, right? Because that element will overshoot the knapsack. So you have to pick some elements which will give the weight, but which won't give as much profit as the 0, 1 knapsack, right? So the solution to the 0, 1 knapsack problem is always less than the optimum solution to the fractional knapsack problem. So this is okay. This intuitive proof is okay, or right? So that's the kind of the upper bound which we will use in order to do the pruning. So we will at every step we will find an upper bound which is based on the fractional knapsack cover value, knapsack packing value, and we will use that value to kind of prune the backtracking tree. Right. So let's try an example and show how this works. So, okay, we will use the same example actually. So the numbers are 45, 30, 45 and 10, and these are the profit values, and the weight values are 3, 5, 9, 5, right, and M is 16. So we have sorted the elements based on the P by W ratios. So if you see the P by W ratios, these are 15, this is 6, this is 5, this is 2. Right. So the first step is we sort the values based on the P by W ratio, profit is to weight ratio, and then these are the numbers N1, N2, N3 and N4. These are the 4 elements. So it's visible for everyone? Okay, so as before we will start with the backtracking tree, which is kind of x1 is equal to 0 and x2 is equal to 0, x1 is equal to 1. So xi is equal to 1 if you pick the solution, you pick element I in solution. Yes. Right. And here you will have this quantity. So at every step we will maintain 3 states, which is the profit, which is the weight, and which is the upper bound. Right? So your profit is 0. You have not picked any element at all. So what is the weight? You have not picked the first element, so your weight is also 0. And what is the upper bound? So the upper bound is how much you can get from the remaining elements. Right? So here what is the upper bound? So initially we will try to pick, this is also 0, this is also 0. So the upper bound we will use the fractional knapsack problem, right? So for example here what is the upper bound? That your M is 16, so we will pick the first element, right, which will give you a profit of 45. You will pick the second element which will give you a profit of 30, right? So now you have covered 8 units of the 16 units, So you cannot include the third element because that will lead to 17, which will overshoot the knapsack value. So you can have some 8 by 9 units of the third element, and that will give you a profit of 8 by 9 times 45, right? So that is 40. So the total profit which you can get out of this is 115. So your upper bound is 115. So what this means is that, so whatever be the knapsack packing solution, the upper bound which you can get is 115. So you cannot get any value which is more than 115 from this instance, right? So that's the meaning of this upper bound at this step, right? So now here you have not picked the value x1, right? So your solution has only these instances, which is n2, n3 and n4.
The upper bound that we are considering, the greedy solution. So isn't it? Does it really? Is it really a value addition? Because unless all the items together, even they are smaller than the total capacity, the fractional knapsack will always reach the total capacity, right? Unless all the items even together they don't reach W.
Yeah.
Right. So.
So I mean you can use any upper bound, right? So the upper bound which you are using in this example is the fractional knapsack. So essentially
we're using the value given by the
greedy solution
for the fractional knapsack.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Now, so what I'm asking is that is it really any value addition? Because if you look at the weight that okay, maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. So this is the value, not the weight. Yeah.
This the intuition behind this algorithm is that at every step you will try to compute some kind of upper bound, right? So you are creating the backtracking tree, right? And at every step you will come up with some kind of upper bound, which is the maximum value which you can get from any subtree behind that tree, right? Right. And whenever you reach some value which is more than this upper bound, then you are done. Then you should not explore that tree. So that's the idea. And for upper bound, I mean you can use any upper bound, but I mean this is a closed upper bound for the 0-1 knapsack. Yeah, that's the best you can get. Any other questions? Okay, so at this step x1 is equal to 0. So you have not picked the element n1. So your set has only these three elements, n2, n3 and n4. And then what is the upper bound which you can get out of these values? So you just compute that. How do you compute that? So you take the third element, right, which is 30, second element which is 30, the third element which is 45, right, and so you are already having 14 units. So you will have 2 by 5 of the third element, so that will give you 10 units, right. So this will be 4 units. So 30 plus 45, 79. So the upper bound here is 79, right. And what is the upper bound here? So that should be same as this quantity because you already have a profit of here 45. Here the weight is 3 because you have come up with this upper bound, and x2 is equal to 1. These are the possible choices at this step. Okay, I will also put this more maybe. So if you pick x2, then you have already have a profit of 75, and your weight is already 3 plus 5 is equal to 8, and your upper bound should be same as this because you already have included x2 in the upper bound computation. And what happens when x2 is not picked? What is the upper bound? Somebody? 98. Okay, so how do you compute this? So you will So you have already picked x1 and you have not picked x2. So if you compute 9 plus 5, so if you take 9, so that will be 45, and then 3 plus 9 is 12, so you are left with 4, so that should be 4 by 5, right? So this is 8. Right, so 45 plus 8 is 98. Right? Okay, so now here,
I'm coming back to the same question again that I
Yes.
raised earlier. So again, I mean, the question is, what value addition is this upper bound providing to you? See, what is the decision that you are making based on this upper bound? That I cannot, that there is no point exploring this path further because it won't be feasible, right?
that is one option. The other option is that if you suppose somehow, okay, from here I get a point where I reach a value which is, say, something like, okay, I am exploring this path maybe, right? From here we get a value which is, say, 100 from this path, right? Then there is no point exploring these paths and these paths, because the value which they can offer me is at most 98, and the value which this can offer me is at most 79, which is less than 100. So this is an optimization problem, not a
That I understand. It's not a yes no thing.
it's not an yes no thing, right? So the value addition which it's giving me is that, I mean, here we are not exploring these paths, the subproblems to these problems. If we get a value which is more than the value, the upper bound of this.
What I'm saying is that just keeping check on the feasibility through weight won't suffice because you have more.
This is an optimization problem. So ideally you should have visited all the paths to get the global optimum, right? But keeping this upper bound, it helps me to keep track of the upper bound of the maximum value which the subtree can provide me for every node.
Not just the visibility, but what will take me towards a better solution.
Towards a better solution.
So you can just get rid of some branches by
Which we are guaranteed it will not
Yeah.
take me to a better solution.
So that's the idea of branch and bound. Okay, so just to complete this example, so here again we see that, okay, so what are the life paths here? So A, so this is C and this is D maybe. So A, C and D are the life paths, and we will visit the path which has the maximum upper bound, maybe here D, so we will come here, right, because it has the maximum upper bound, right? And then again we do the same experiment here. So there are two options, x3 is equal to 0 and x3 is equal to 1.
We will not explore C further because again that will not lead us to a better solution.
Currently no, yeah, but let's see, we will not, because this is the path which is providing me
The
some,
moment I wait for then we factor.
yeah, then we will factor. Okay, so what are the options here? So x3 is equal to 1 means that we have picked the element 3 also, but that will lead to overshooting, right? Because you have picked x1 is equal to 1, x2 is equal to 1, x3 is equal to 1. So that will give to a solution which has weight more than the knapsack, right? So that's not a feasible solution. So this is not feasible. So there is no point going there, right? So now what is the upper bound for x3 is equal to 0? So here your P is 75, W is 8, and upper bound is what? So you have 3 and 5 and you can have all this, so it will be 85, right? So what are the options at C? So x3 is equal to 0 means the profit is same, the weight is same, and what is the upper bound? It will be 3 plus 5, 8, which is fine. 45 plus 10, 55. Right? and x3 is equal to 1 means it will be p is equal to 90 because you have picked the element 3. W is equal to 3 plus 9 which is 12. And what is the upper bound? Right. So I'm sorry, but I should make it more clear. Right? This is fine. So this is F and G. So the current life sets are AC, F and G. And what is the maximum? Okay, C is gone, right? So maybe ACE, AEFG. AEFG, so the maximum is 90. So we'll go here. Right? And then we see that, okay, if you set x4 is equal to 0 here, so that will give me the solution of 90, right? And then you see that, okay, so this gives me a solution of 90, and what are the remaining life sets? These are the remaining life sets are A, E, G, right? And A has upper bound of 79, E has upper bound of 85, and G has upper bound of, G we took, and F has upper bound of 55. So all of them has upper bounds which is less than 90, right? So the idea is that we have not explored all of the trees. That's the one idea. The second idea is there is no proper particular pattern that always we traverse the left first or the right first. We have hop around from one node to another node arbitrarily based on the upper bound values. And whenever the upper bound value is, whenever the value which we get is more than the upper bound values at every node, there we stop. We know that that's the optimum solution. Right. So any questions on this branch and bound? Because that's the last which I had. So I am very much short of time.
What did you say? What is the terminating criteria?
Terminating criteria is suppose you have a solution. So for example, here you have the solution of 90, right? And the solution value is more than the upper bounds at all the remaining live nodes. Then you know that each of these live nodes cannot give you solution better than the upper bound, right? And we have already got a solution which is more than that. So that's the terminating condition. Yeah? G upper bound is coming to be 98. Why? Because, okay, 98, fine. Okay, so then we will explore this, right? We will set x4 is equal to 0 and x4 is equal to 1. But if you set x4 is equal to 1, this will be infeasible. And x4 is equal to 0, this will give you, I think, 90. Value of 90. Right? But this value is more than the upper bound values at all the other places. So we will terminate.
Once again, the same question that I had raised for subsets and problem. DP versus backtracking problem, 0 with knapsack problem.
Yes. So as I said before, there you know that there is a bound of C, right? If you do DP. So if you have, it's a pseudo polynomial algorithm, right? In the case of DP, and you know that the bound will be at most some C times some polynomial. But here there is, you can go on, right? Switching on. So generally if you have backtracking and DP, then it's better to use DP, except for the case where like increase problem where you have I mean, where DB does not give you any other additional advantage, because
Not every problem that we are discussing for backtracking is a good candidate for backtracking.
yes, yes. Yeah, n queen, I mean, the advantage is that, I mean, there is no common subproblem, because I mean, it's every time it's kind of a new configuration for the top, right? So there is no advantage for storing any information, because that will lead to actually just additional storage for DP.
And if W is very, very huge, then probably you can.
Then probably we can use backtracking. Yeah. But the problem with backtracking is that, I mean, you don't have any kind of, generally we don't have any expression for the running time. I mean, the running time is always, worst case running time is always exponential. Whereas for the DP, you can just formalize the running time and give some kind of expression for the running time. Yeah, so I think we have a lot of time remaining.
Questions? You can run that animation of backtracking for and wait.
Yeah, okay. It's like you can just play around. So suppose you place a queen here, then this will show what all other places where you cannot place, right? And then you can, you will try maybe the next place, you will go to the next row, you try the empty place here, which is this one, you try to place a queen here, and this will show what all other places which is empty space, you place a queen here, and this cancels all the places and so on. So now when you go to the fifth row, you have this as the empty space, and if you go to the sixth row, there is no other empty space, right? So here we have come to a dead end, right? So the idea is you will go back to the previous row, which is this one, undo the mark, so and then try the next alternative, which is this one, right? But here also we see that no other option is left for the sixth row, so we'll go back here, but there is no more option left in this row also, so we'll have to go back. You will have to backtrack to the previous row, right, and place here. So as I said before, I mean, without doing recursion, you can just apply a stack here as well. So whenever you place a queen somewhere, you just put an entry in the stack that I have placed a queen there, and whenever you do backtrack, you will just pop that entry from the stack. Right, and maybe here you place it, you are not able to here, but still you are not done, so you have to this is also not done, and so on. Okay. Yeah, so you can play around with this. Okay. Yeah. And in general, you can have n-queens problem for where it becomes more complex. Yeah, any other questions? Comments, discussions?
Maybe we can have questions from previous sessions as well. If you have questions from
Yeah, if you have any doubts or yeah.
we can discuss right now. Any questions? And anyways, we are going to have a quiz, so you better get your doubts cleared.
Out of topic basically. I like to listen something from your area, which you are working.
Some more problems also that are in my mind.
Yeah, but yeah, so I can talk about two problems, but those will be some kind of I do not know. I mean, so those are online problems. I think Samir may have some topic on online problems. I don't know.
No, we won't be going that deep.
You won't be going that deep. Okay, so
Just one archetype.
okay, so all these problems which you are seeing, which I discussed and which was part of a material, these are called offline problems, right? So whatever the problems which we discussed, these are called offline problems. Why? Because you are given some kind of input, so you know the input in advance, and then based on the input you try to figure out what is the optimization problem or what is the whether there is a feasible solution or something like that. But the crux is that you are given the input in advance. So these are called offline problems. The other problem which is in contrast to this problem is the online problem. So where it happens like this, the inputs appear one at a time, right? So suppose, for example, very simple example may be that, okay, so we have these elements which are appearing, maybe 3, 4, 5, 10 and so on, and maybe the idea is you want to keep a sorting of the, I mean it's a very simple algorithm, very simple example, you want to maintain a sorted array of these elements, right? But the idea is that, I mean, you do not see the elements all the elements in advance. So whenever an element comes, you sort that element, so, right? For example, initially 3 comes, you sort it 3. Next maybe 5 comes, you sort it, maintain it 5, and then 4 comes, then you want to insert it somewhere which is 4 and so on, right? So this is called online algorithms, right, where the input comes at one at a time, and whenever the input comes you want to maintain some property of the algorithm. Okay, so now the problem which we have been working on, that is called online graph coloring. Or in particular online tree coloring. Right. So as I said before, you have this graph coloring problem, right, where you are given a graph GVE, and then you want to color the vertices such that no two adjacent vertices get the same color. So that's the offline version of the problem, where you are given the graph in advance and you want to color the vertices. So the other alternative is that the vertices of the graph arrive online. So they arrive one at a time. And whenever a vertex arrives, it shows the edges which are there with the already existing vertices. And then the idea is to color the vertices of the tree in such cases. How do we do that? Okay, so why this is bad? Why this is harder than the offline version? So just consider the tree, right? So any tree you can color using 2 colors, right? Because you can arrange the tree like this, like a binary tree or something, or whatever be the case, and then you can have and you can use maybe 2 colors, maybe red and blue. You use the color red here, so that you use the color blue here, and maybe red here and so on, right? So any tree can be colored using 2 colors in the offline version, right? Which is very obvious from the picture, that you find the height of the trees, and based on the odd heights you will give them one color, for the even heights you will give them another color, right? So for tree coloring in the offline version, you can color it using 2 colors. But what happens in the online version? In the online version what happens is that, so maybe one vertex comes, right? Whenever one vertex comes you have to color it. So maybe you give a color red, maybe, right? So the next vertex comes, you give a color, say, and it has edges with this red color, so you have to give it color blue. Why you cannot give it color red? Because it has already edges to a red color vertex, so you have to give it color blue, right? And maybe another 2 vertex comes which you have colored red and blue like this, right? Maybe, okay, so maybe this comes in the first step, you color it red. This comes in the next step, you color it blue. In the third step the vertex comes, you color it maybe red. This has no edges, so you can color it give it color red. And maybe in the fourth step this vertex comes which has edge to this, so you have to color it blue, right? So this is the scenario right now. Now in the 5th step a vertex comes, right, and it has edges, one with this and one with this, right? So this is still a tree, just to note. So what is the color which you have to give it to it, right? So you cannot give it color blue because this has already color blue. you cannot give it color red because this already has color red. So you have to give a new color to it, maybe yellow, right? And you can extend this example. You can extend this example to show that in the online tree coloring, you require at least login colors for invertices, right? So you can extend this example as below, that you can recreate the same structure, right? And then a new vertex may come which has one edge to yellow, one edge to blue, right? So maybe here it's like this. So there are three structures which are recreated, which are copies of this, and then a new vertex comes which has one edge to yellow, one edge to blue, and one edge to green. So you have to color it with a new color. At most login, yeah. Right. So this is bad. So in the online version, what we see is tree coloring requires login colors, order login colors in the worst case. That's the complexity. So just to see, from the offline version it was 2 colors. For the online version, you can do login, right? Whereas in the best solution is to color it using 2 colors, right?
So you can't change the coloring. Whatever is gone is gone.
So in the online version, in the ideal online version, that's the setting, that you cannot change the color,
You
right?
can't change
You
the
cannot change the
color.
color. Yeah, you cannot change the decision. Yeah. So that's the online setting. So what we are studying is exactly that if you are allowed to change the colors of some vertices which you have already seen, then can you do it better?
And some meaning
Some bounded. No, some means some bounded. That if there are n vertices which have arrayed, then in the amortized case you can change the color of at most ordered n vertices, some constant fraction of the total vertices. So if you are allowed to do to change the color, then whether you can get a constant competitive ratio. So that's one problem which we are looking. We don't get 2, but we get a constant factor. Yeah.
If we are allowed to backtrack, we can do that.
Yeah, but there is a bound, right? So you are not allowed to backtrack. You are not allowed to change the colors. Huh?
You'll be wasting time.
No.
allowed to change or
So I mean, if you say that okay, I am allowed to change the color for everything, then obviously you can do 2, right? At every step you do backtracking, you find the best solution, and then you give 2 at every step. But the problem here is that you will be changing colors of lot of vertices, which will be bad, and which is not allowed in the online version. So the objective here is that you have some bound on the number of vertices which you can change color, and with that bound, whether you can get a constant factor.
that's an open problem.
No, I mean this is not an open problem. I mean there is already a solution.
No, if you're no, acha, this
The lower bound ensemble is already known that it will be login. This is obvious.
But having given the opportunity to change the colors of a constant fraction.
Right. So the thing is, for this case, right? So if it's a simple tree, then it's already known. It's not very difficult to show that with some order and amortization changes, you can make it. I think some 3C. I mean 6 or 8. I think 4 factor something, 8 colors or something. Yeah. I think 3 times, 3 or something, 3 colors you can do it, 3 or 4 colors you can do it. But yeah.
Property also on the nodes that we can modify.
No, the only constant is that you are not allowed to modify you are not allowed to change lot of colors.
The number is given.
That's just a number. So if there are n vertices which are added, so you can only change the color for a fraction of n, maybe some half n or 1/3 n or something. And depending on the factor, so generally if it's Cn, so what we showed was if it's Cn, where C is some fraction, then the factor is kind of I think 2 by C, something like this. So if you are allowed to change half of the nodes, then you can get a factor of 4 something. Right. So this is known. The problem which is there is, I mean, now suppose all the links have some kind of capacities, right? So it's not this problem. Maybe now we want to say that you have a graph, right? It's a more general problem where all the links have some kind of capacities, right? And you want to color the links, and there is some kind of paths coming. So it's kind of path coloring problem. So every edge has some kind of capacity, right? C1, C2, C3. So this is a general graph, not a tree, right? And every edge some kind of capacity, and there are edges coming, and you have to color the edges. You have to color the paths in the tree or in the line. And what is the capacity of an edge means that if the capacity is Ci, then Ci paths on this edge can have the same color. So that's the setting.
No, no, on the path, which path?
So forget about tree coloring right now. So the problem which we don't have any solution right now, that's this.
No, my question, my question is about the problem definition itself. So one edge will belong to multiple paths and any path will have multiple edges.
Yeah, so now we are considering graph coloring, not tree coloring, right? That's the problem.
Yeah, just one question before we move to graph coloring
Yeah.
and leaf tree coloring. So in tree coloring, so what if we are allowed to move forward, move backward a few number of steps, not a fraction of n nodes, but we can go back in history only few steps.
Yes, so I mean I think there should be some work done on that, but I don't know the results, but yeah.
So the tree that it was not a binary tree.
So if you have any tree, right?
Earlier one, will that make a difference?
No. So if you have any tree, then also you can color it with two colors. Depend.
Not the one that you made.
Yeah, so it won't make a difference.
Three branches. So will that make any difference if it's not a binary?
No, it won't make any difference. So you can, no, it won't make any difference.
Even binary is creating a problem. So
Yeah. So you will have the lower bound example even on binary tree, right? Not, may not be true, but yeah, we can create an example maybe. Okay, so the problem which we don't have solution is like this, that you have this, it's edge coloring on graphs or path coloring on graphs.
Little bit.
Okay, so here we are given some graphs, right? So right now assume that the graph is tree, maybe tree, path coloring on trees. Right, you are given a tree and every edge of the tree has some capacity which may be unequal. So C1 is there, maybe this is C2, this is C3 and so on. So the capacities of the edges are different on this graph of the edges, right? And you have paths which you have to color. So maybe this is one path, this is one path, this is one path, right? So these are the paths which needs to be colored. Another path may be this, another path may be this, and so on. So these are the different paths which each path stretches multiple edges, right? And the objective is to color the paths, not the edges. The edges are already there, you have to color the paths, right? And each path will have only one color. You have to color a path by a single color. But the constraint is that there will be multiple paths which are traveling across one edge, right? So maybe this is one path, maybe this is one path, maybe this is one path, right? So there will be multiple paths which pass to this edge. So the constant is that at most 8 edges which pass to this edge can have the same color. So that's the constant. 8 paths which travel through these edges can have the same color, and this should be true for all the edges.
Otherwise, there can be more than 8 paths that can cross.
Yeah, there can be more than 8 paths, but then you have to give them different colors. You cannot give them the same color.
At most 8 can have the same color.
At most, yeah, 8 edges which are traveling through this edge, they can have the same color.
So these paths they are part of the input, the ones that you are supposed to.
They are part of the input, but they are coming online. They are coming online.
So you are given.
You are given the tree.
A path.
You are given a tree. The tree is given.
Tree is offline.
Tree is offline.
Tree is offline, but the paths that you get, you are given which paths to color, right? Because otherwise there are exponential.
Yeah, you are given which paths to color, but they are arriving online. They are not given offline.
And you are not allowed to undo or redo.
Yeah, I mean you are allowed to do undo, but there is no result known. That's the. So if the capacities are same, if it's uniform capacity, then we know the solution. But if it's different capacities, we do not know.
Even if the capacities are constant, uniform.
Uniform capacity, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So what would be a real world example on which this problem is? Could it be GPS, road finding?
Okay, so I think you can map this to some kind of even some kind of map coloring problem maybe, but generally it's online, right? Or example another maybe some kind of
Like route finding maybe, where some of the edges are saturated and we are interested to
Yes, another maybe, congestion kind of thing. So you are given some kind of network, transportation systems where maybe the capacity of this link is maybe at most this, and then maybe you want to find out how many lanes you have to create. How many lanes you have, maybe the capacity of each lane is maybe 10 cars, and then for this to accommodate the traffic, how many lanes you have to create for each of these edges, right? So that each lane can accommodate that many number of cars. Right. Yeah, so one application is transport, vehicle transport. Yeah, so if the capacities are uniform, if the capacities across all edges are same, then there is a solution which is a constant commutative ratio. But if it is different, then we do not know what's the result.
And you compare it with the offline test.
Offline best, yes.
So do we have algorithm? Yeah, so for uniform capacities, what did you say? What's the result? Which will do as good as the offline test?
Constant competitive.
Constant.
Yes, so another model is, if you reject some of the paths. So that's also something, so the idea is that, we will color, maybe we will color all but some fraction of the paths, then can you get a constant competitive fraction. So suppose there are n paths which arrive, I say that, okay, I won't color all of them, maybe I will color only some fraction, maybe 3/4 of the paths, then can we get constant competitive fraction. So that's another model.
How is that optimal number, the optimal fraction decided? And how much part would be covered having multiple colors over there?
Yeah.
So some kind of an optimal number to decide?
Yeah, so optimal number is quite easy, right? So suppose there are n paths, there are n paths which travel through this edge, and the capacity is C, right? So now offline optimum is at most m by C, right? Because each can accommodate C paths and there are n paths, and the offline optimum will be maximum over m by C over all edges. So that's the offline optimum, right?
So this some fraction is my partial version, right?
Yeah, some fraction, yeah. So there it will be kind of, if you,
Less than 1.
yeah, so the thing is, if you,
Less than 1 helps, or because otherwise partial is a generalization of this, right?
so you're talking about this one? Yeah, so the idea is that if you are allowed to reject epsilon fraction of this, then you should get something as 1 over epsilon, order 1 over epsilon, commutative ratio.
Okay, so if you are not allowed to reject anything,
Yeah, then it's,
right?
yeah, then you should do that. So that's the kind of order which you do here. The bigger the epsilon is, the lesser is the commutative ratio.
And there is some practical applications where what kind of data is there where online 3D coloring is required?
Okay, so yeah, online tree coloring, it will be like maybe one application is maybe what do I say?
I don't know, bandwidth allocation happens dynamically. The frequency. Online means you have frequent.
Online means, even these apps, right? So there, what do they do? It's,
Seriously, load balancing is required to use this kind of thing?
yeah, so wherever it's kind of real time, right? You have to decide very soon or something, right? Mainly in this kind of online apps or something. where based on the current scenario you decide on you take some actions, right? So there
Electricity regulator kind of an application, you see what is
Some action that
when you are tracing from the source to the destination, which paths will take you.
We have some apps and we are displaying ads on those apps. So we want these ads to be different on each path. So like the person is seeing the same apps, but we want that each app displays a different ad. We have a centralized control for that advertisements.
yeah, but you want this to be real time. I mean, this to be refreshed every time and now. So that's the idea. Wireless network, that's one option. Yeah, so depending on what is the channel load, you may want to switch routers or something. Any other questions on this or any clarifications?
Currently also you are working with such similar problems or you are
Yeah, so I mean this is one problem which I am working currently. The other one which we looked at, which I looked at in my PhD was more of job scheduling problems, where you have these different machine models like, I mean the simplest is parallel models, then you have related machines, unrelated machines, subset parallel. So all those machine models you have, and there you want to schedule some jobs which are coming online, and you want to kind of minimize some parameters, maybe the flow time, what is the maximum flow time, all those things. Yeah, so those will need some kind of background, so I didn't want to go there. So that's why. So those were part of my PhD work, but this is some work which is very easy to explain and which I am working now.
So I like to thank for his valuable time.
Yeah.